All right. Good morning. Welcome to Meet the Masters. I'm Tim Watson. Today I'm joined by Master Patrick West. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to talk today.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out and inviting me.
Yeah, we've obviously been in many events together, but I don't think we've got the chance to talk much. How are things going down in Texas for you right now?
Oh, I tell you, it's always busy and always something going on. As I always said, it's busier than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
What
Um,
busy with like the dojang, outside of the dojang? What's going on?
all the above, all the
Yeah.
above. There's, you know, association, regional, studio, and then of course, personal life and everything. So there's always something going on, but I wouldn't want it any other way. Just keep it busy.
Yeah, I saw recently we were on this the same meeting. You're the assistant regional director. If people don't know, what region are you in, sir?
Yeah, Region 4, comprised of primarily Texas, but the surrounding states as well.
And you're the assistant regional director under Buquanjan M. Sharp.
That is correct. Assistant regional director. Um, yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been doing it actually unofficially for quite a few years, and then when that position became available and official, it was just a natural fit.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I feel like you were probably unofficially the assistant for years, because I know that you and Master Sharp are friendly.
Yes, we've known each other quite a few years. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so I'm sure we'll talk about that quite a bit. So let's start with how did you get started in the martial arts?
Yeah. I started in the martial arts in the 70s, late 70s. Uh, I was young, junior high. Um, and what happened at the time, what got me into the martial arts was there was two major factors. Um, one was Kung Fu was a series, active series on with Derek Carradine, and it fascinated me in watching that show. Actually, my mother enjoyed it too. So my mother and I would watch those episodes, and kind of feel that curiosity. But then a instructor from San Antonio, so Pearsall, where I grew up, is about an hour south of San Antonio, small town, population 6,000. Well, an instructor traveled from San Antonio and opened up a martial arts class there, and it was actually run out of the Wishing Well Club. It was called the Wishing Well Club. It was like a dance venue, a 1-inch wooden floor off of cement, and it was a combination of Aikido and Taekwondo. And one of my best friends got into it, and so he told me about it, and so I got into it with him, and got into those classes, and soon to find out, between the show and actually having those lessons, it just sparked a passion in me. But after 2 months, we found out the instructor wasn't a good fit, and so my parents, very supportive, actually came to San Antonio one weekend, looked around and found a studio. It was owned by Mr. Floyd Guidry. And the significance of Mr. Floyd Guidry, anyway, they liked him, and I went there and I started going there, and that's when I studied under him. But Floyd Guidry was a student of Grandmaster Shin at Ozon Air Force Base. And as a matter of fact, he was best friends with Chuck Norris. They both were MPs, military police, there, and they both say, "Hey, let's take some martial art lessons." So they took judo, and they took lessons Tang Soo Do under Grandmaster Shin. And so I thought that was a pretty cool lineage. Chuck Norris, after they left Ozon, of course, Chuck Norris, his history went on, and point fighter champion and all this. My instructor continued teaching martial arts as he went from Air Force Base to Air Force Base. But then one time this is probably more than you want to know, but what happened was one time I came into class, and he said, "Pat, I need for you to teach class tonight." Okay, what's up? He said, "I gotta go to," it was one of the Air Force bases. We have 5 Air Force bases here, but he said, "I gotta go to the Air Force base to meet up with Chuck Norris." I was like, "What?" I was like, that's when I found out the connection. And I was like, "Well, can I go?" But anyway, so he met with him. But and then years and years later, I got to meet Chuck Norris Comic-Con, and I mentioned, of course, he mentioned Grandmaster Shin during his talk about his start. And then when I met with him, I mentioned that, and also Floyd Guidry. Whatever he's doing, he just dropped his pen, threw his hands back, and said, "Man, you're taking me way back." And he said, "Make sure you say hello for me." And so that was a confirmation of that connect. So of that connection point. So anyway, that's how I got my start in the lineage that follows it.
Yeah, I find that time frame so interesting in the 70s, where I don't know how many military guys came back and started studios, but you have that direct lineage from the Osan Air Force Base, and I know Grandmaster Shin, among a number of other guys, taught there. But it's fascinating to me to hear stories about those guys who came back, and I'm assuming, other than guys that they knew that also trained, they didn't have a lot of resources, because you couldn't email or or YouTube videos of Grandmaster Shin back in the day. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Matter of fact, when he got into San Antonio, I guess because Tung Soo Do wasn't very popular, my instructor went to Taekwondo. And so my first black belt was in 1979 under the ATA with and got my black belt in Taekwondo. But soon thereafter, he I guess made contact with Grandmaster Shin, and but I think the reason he went to Taekwondo is because it was popular. It was everybody knew that. They didn't know Tung Soo Do at the time, and so I think he did that. But yeah, he soon after he went connected with Grandmaster Shin, and we think in retrospect, I might have tested in front of Grandmaster Shin for like my red belt or something. I remember having a visitor, and it might have been him, but it was he converted, and so in 1981, that's when I got into Tung Soo Do, tested for my second degree in the U.S. Tung Soo Do Federation, which was still, being managed by Grandmaster Shin.
So then, shortly after, in 1982, the association was founded and the Charter Convention happened. Were you at the Charter Convention?
Yeah, that's interesting. No, so physically, I was not there.
Okay.
Physically, I was not there. Now, how did I become a charter member? Let me tell you. So yeah, so I tested in 81 with Grandmaster Shin, U.S. Tung Soo Do. Next thing I know, you're right. The following year, I get this letter, an invitation from Grandmaster Shin to go to the Charter Convention and be part of that historical event. Well, I don't think he realized how young I was. And then my parents were not, we weren't wealthy or nothing like that. And so I couldn't afford the trip. But what he did provide in the letter was a proxy vote. And basically stating I supported the formation of the association, and then with my parents' guidance, also send a monetary contribution along with that. And so via that communication, that's how I got to be honored to be a charter member.
Yeah, that's great. How old were you at that point?
I was supposed to be in and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But yeah, I was probably a sophomore in high
Okay.
school. Yeah, sophomore in high school. I don't think he realized how young I was. Because years later, he invited me after the association was formed. I was a freshman in college, and he invited me to go to Philadelphia because it was before the master's clinic, right? And go to Philadelphia to test for my third degree, and I was like, I had to write. I was a poor college student, and so it felt weird. I had to write him a letter and tell him, thank you so much for the invitation, but I have to decline testing for my third degree at that time because I can't afford to go on the trip and everything. So it wasn't until after I graduated college 4 or 5 years later that and I was still active, right? I was still with the association and everything, teaching. I was still, because I ran a studio all through high school and then I taught people in college. But it wasn't until after I finished college and I started my career that I was able to test for my third degree.
So you mentioned that you ran a studio when in your teens. So you got your start under while you worked with, you said, Floyd Guidry. Did you continue to train under him, or when you were a teenager, what did you do in those years?
That's a good question. What happened was after went on and the World Tongue Association was formed, right before it was formed, Floyd Guidry got out of the business. Mm-hmm. He stopped teaching. But in essence, when he did that, I mean, Grandmaster Shin became my instructor. And so he and I would correspond, and I would run the studio, and so a few years later, I was always interacting with headquarters and him directly. Well, then on only 1 year, I submitted one of my first students to black belt, and I get a note like, "Oh, you have to go through your regional director." There's a regional director? Who? What? Who's that? And that's when I found out. And so anyway, that's how I made contact. And then with the regional director. And then soon after that, I was testing for my third degree. As soon as I found out there was a regional director.
So you didn't have, I was going to ask that question if you eventually went to Philadelphia to test. So it sounds like you found out you weren't on an island.
Yeah, because all these years I was like an island. You should have seen me when I first got the formal patch. There's a picture out there. I'm doing a flying sidekick against a bag. I get the formal patch that we put on our blue uniforms.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me putting it right here. I didn't realize that, that goes on a blue uniform, on a blue suit. So I had it, because in the old days, we used to be school patch. Like school patch and then organization patch. There used to be 2 patches. Mm-hmm. And so, I thought, okay, this is okay, I'll put it right here.
I still have people come up and go, what do I use this for? Yeah. That's for your dress blues.
That's right. Yeah.
So at that point, who was the regional director?
Yeah. So this is in the late 80s, I believe now. Yeah. Because so 82 and then late 80s, a few years later. It was Andy Stewart, Master Andy Stewart. And sorry about that.
That's okay.
And turn that off. And so yeah, that's where I got advancement, a very charismatic individual. Um, and then soon after I met him, that's when I met Bo Quantin named Sharp um, at the time. So we've known each other since the late 80s.
What motivated you to continue to teach and train through those years of, again, like I said, at that point you were communicating with Grandmaster Shin, whether it was an email or not even email, letter,
Yeah.
and possibly phone calls. What was the motivation to keep teaching, at such a young age, and just kind of, I guess, forge your own path in a certain way?
Yeah, it was it's a it's a passion that continues today. I think the main motivation factors back then is um I love the activity, I love the exercise, and I sure did love sparring. I love sparring, and I remember we'll have a whole class session and full over an hour of just sparring, and I would just feel like a gladiator, sweating and yeah, and so I think that was more for personal achievement. And then when I started teaching, I found satisfaction in helping others and expanding the martial art of Tang Soo Do. And especially now, so many years um, later, not so much as the physical aspects, but the fact that I get satisfaction in, I've seen so many students over the years. I've seen them grow. Um, I've seen them start at 7 years old, and next thing I know, they're in high school or college, and they got their first degree or second degree black belt with me, and seeing them grow as an individual, uh, not only martial arts, but personally, and grow into great young people. So I think that kept me motivated. But the other thing is now is I want to, especially where I'm at now, my age, is the legacy that I want to do my part in contributing to continue the legacy that was started by Grandmaster Shin.
That's great, and I appreciate you saying that. You mentioned like seeing kids grow up, and now even me myself, they're now bringing their kids in to teach and to train, and it's always fun seeing one of those people get their dobok back on. It doesn't always happen. I've got a couple people right now that I used to train with, and it's like, come on, let's dust that black belt back off. When are you getting back on the mat?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've even had a grandchild come in. I was like, oh my God.
I'm not that old, am I?
No. But yeah, the fact that I had 3 generations from one family come in, I was like, wow,
I know one of the students, Master Daniel Marco, always jokes about being an honorary Texan. And I know he trained with you for a period. Yeah. And when I talked with him, he speaks so highly of you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's one of my, matter of fact, I'll be seeing him next week. I'll be going to Sweden to the European Championship next week. So I'm looking forward to seeing him and everybody up there. It'll be my 3rd trip up there. They've invited me at their 10th anniversary, their 15th, no, 20th, 10th, 20th, and now this one. And they told me over there in Sweden that, say, you're our grandfather. It's like, what? Yeah, we consider you're our grandfather. I was like, thanks. Make me feel older, but thanks.
Right.
So
I'm so happy that he's finally getting a chance to do that, because when I first started these interviews, he was one of the first ones I did. And that was probably April of 2020. And he talked about all of the plans that he had. And, I talked to him and it got pushed back, and I talked to him again. And obviously here we are in 2023, and it's finally coming to a fruition. So I'm happy for them.
Yeah, very, very happy for them too. Yeah, same thing. He's over the years, he's told me what his plans was, and I commend him for, keeping an eye on that go and making it a reality. So, yeah, I always brag about him too.
Well, the feeling is mutual, I assure you. What was the training? You talk about starting at a young age, and you mentioned loving sparring. I wanted to say that. Do you ever get a chance to spar now with the students every now and then, or you just leave that to the kids?
Well, I have to admit, probably the most part, but now and then I do it with them. But yeah, it's always fun. Now I'm more probably hand techniques than foot techniques.
Hey,
that's what I noticed.
There's foot techniques still there. You got to get your hands there somehow. So
yeah,
just not kicking as much.
Yeah, that's right. So,
what was the training like back then? Was coming from that military background at the Air Force Base? Was it? I don't know if you were ever in the service, but did it feel more of like that regimented Army training?
No, good question. Well, my background is my dad, both. Well, and I'll tell you with Mr. Guidry too. But my dad was a Army colonel, and he was part of the OSS, the precursor to the CIA and Special Forces, and he did guerrilla warfare in the Burma, behind the Burma lines, and so he's actually mentioned it in a book called Behind the Burma Lines. But he, I saw him how organized he was and disciplined he was. And then when I went with Floyd Guidry, Floyd Guidry had a good sense of humor, but he was he had a certain level of expectations, and so he would, that was, you can't really do it nowadays too much, but he used to walk around with a little stick and tap you till where you notice that, get your stance in a better position, and all this stuff. And so, but anyway, it was to me, it was definitely, I tried when I was teaching, and especially in my younger years, I try to replicate that, but notice okay, don't use a stick, use a blocker.
Right.
Everything's because the mental aspects of the generations have changed, and so you have to change your tactics.
Yeah, I had a conversation recently with someone else, and he talked about, like, his instructor always expected him to, like, they trained hard, so he tried to do the same thing in a different area, and it didn't work. So he had to adjust. He still expected a lot from his students, but he just had to go at it a different way. And I'm sure for teaching it for as long as you're constantly having to evolve and adjust things and take what works here. This doesn't work anymore. What if I try this? And just go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Every once in a while, the old school comes out of me sometimes, but yeah, I have to be the kinder, gentler person.
Do you ever get that? Yeah, you have someone who train with you, and then they bring their kids in and go like, "Hey, wait, you would have yelled at me for that. You'd have hit me with a stick."
No, I've actually had that comment to me. He's like, "Sir, you changed." Like, I would spend hours on takedowns and self-defense and throw them and all this stuff, and now I kind of focus on the core curriculum more so than, and then every once in a while do the other stuff. But yeah, the emphasis has changed over the time.
Yeah, like you said, people change, what their needs and wants change. Um, I've been teaching for about 15 years, and just in that, if you look at it, it's a small time frame, but to think about like my personal shifts and changes and the shifts and changes of the students, it's actually been pretty big, at least in
Yeah,
our area.
no, definitely, definitely.
Now you mentioned uh you met Quantum Sharp back in the 80s. When did you do you guys get a chance, or have you in the past got a chance to train? And when did you start like getting a chance to work with him more and being able to connect more with him and possibly his students?
Um, yes, I mean, soon after that, I mean, we, especially after you became um, regional director, that's when we had more opportunities to get together. And I remember uh, I used to have, when I first met him, he had a studio in Conroe, which is north of Houston. And so that's where we met him, and I would go up there and different events or black belt tests and things like that. And then uh, as you know, during the years, we would go to seminars together. Um, I remember one time we would, uh, let's say, get some, just kind of get into Kempo a little bit. And uh, I would travel, get this, I would travel to Houston, which is about 3 or 4 hours, about 4 hours drive, go to Houston, pick him up. Then we would go to Dallas from there, which is another probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours from where he was at. So I would go travel 8 hours. Then we would go get a couple hours of instruction and then travel back. and and that's just because of the love of of learning new stuff and expanding and stuff like that. So I think back and say, how do we do that? you know, um, the ratio of hours of traveling to get certain instruction. So anyway, we enjoyed it, and even to this day, we take those principles that we learned and apply it in a Tang Soo Do framework.
Well, I feel like you have those memories. It's not just the hours on the mat, but it's the car ride to and from, the camaraderie shared in that. And then um, when I have the opportunity to do trainings like that, whether it's like that or in the association or outside of it, and you have that opportunity, you hold that a little more in more reverence, right? Because of the time put in to acquire those skills, right? And so you feel you feel the pain of all that time spent, and then you feel like you have to put that to use. So I understand that, and I appreciate that, because again, we talk about now and with technology, all of that stuff is available at your fingertips, but I would argue that it's different, right? Like you said, you could look at it and be like, oh, that's cool, right? You see a 30-second video and then you move on, but you spent the time to go there and learn a technique. And Master Godwin always said, I spent X amount of dollars for one technique, but it was worth it.
Yeah, that's a great example or a great viewpoint of that, because that's true. And even now, when the Master King started, and started going to the master's clinic right after it went into Alabama. And first, I think 2 or 3 we flew, but after a while we decided to do the drive. And you're right, that's what we enjoy. Book Hunter Jim Sharp and I would drive to the master's clinic, and we talked the entire time. You know, it's a good, I think, 10 or 12 hour drive from him, from his place. And we used to travel through the night. Not anymore. We wake up early in the morning, but yeah, we would talk the entire time about everything, you know. So I think those are the, like you said, the precious memories and the camaraderie.
Now you said that was just you and him. Now then has the convoy's grown a little bit, or do you still drive down?
Yeah, oh yeah, we still drive down. Instead of leaving at 10 o'clock at night, we leave like, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. At least get some sleep in.
Right.
But no, you're right. Like one time, I think we had Master Baron, Miss Moose, Giselle Sharp, Behringer. So it was like 6 of us a couple of times in the deal, in the vehicle. And so that was interesting, being so packed.
Right.
So now it fluctuates. This past year we went by ourselves, but yeah, but it just expands the conversation and all that stuff.
You mentioned the Masters Clinic, and I'm sure I saw you at World Championships before that, but the memories I have as a candidate is just standing by the steps and then people moving you this, that, and the other direction for you to snap pictures of everyone to get the group pictures. So I wanted to talk about that part, like your photography part. What motivated you to, take up, I'm assuming, as a hobby? And, how did you become that guy that was the official photographer for that? And then, some of the books after that.
Yeah. Well, my start in photography, my dad was into photography, and he gave me my first camera, and I tried to make a go of doing it like during college, but and so I combined my 2 passions of martial arts and photography, because I started, when eBay first came on board, I started buying photography equipment and studio equipment and all that stuff, because, you know how it is. I don't know if you, with your studio, how a lot of studios, they go to action photography or whatever, and they bring them in and they take the photos of their students and all this stuff. And the common complaint I got from my parents was the packages were so expensive. I said, I can do this. And so, and I still do it today. Once a year, every November, for 2 days, I turn my studio into a photography studio, and I take photographs of my students, in action photos and all this stuff. So, so that's how I got into it, and then expanding and got all the equipment. Well, I was there when Book Hunter Jim Sharp's father, Butch Sharp, did the first books, the first photographs with the books, and just through association, I was involved with it. I was like if you look in the old books, I was the bad guy in the black uniform. A lot of them, right? And
talk about like the first editions.
Yeah, the first editions. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you look at the first editions, I'm the guy in the inset with the application being beat up, right? And so it was neat to be part of that process, that project of putting those first books out. And I also was part of the tactical committee at the time, because they gave us assignments. I think mine was 6 through 10 hands. All right. And then we would use the master's clinic as working sessions, and we would come in and say, okay, present your segment and any proposed changes to the one steps. And so that was some interesting working sessions, let me tell you that. But a lot of good feedback, right? Input into it. And so taking that, being part of the technical committee with the proposed changes, and then applying it during a photo session, and making those photos happen. But then of course the bottom line is, Grandmaster Shin was seeing, like, let's say like number 29 on hands, right? Today you go in, you do a ridge hand up into the groin area and then takedown, right? Well, if you look at the original photo, it's an ox jaw into the groin. Well, by then the photograph was already done, so we kept it there. We just changed it on the words, and that was the final say from Grandmaster Shin, to say that's what we're going to do instead, or keep it the original. So anyway, that's how they got into that. I mean, part of that process. But then when it was time to redo the books, right? Revise them, or even create the master's text, right? Because master text was involved. So I got involved with the forms, the one steps, revision books, and of course the creation of the master's text, which I think was a lifetime achievement for Grandmaster Shin there. And so when it was time to talk about doing those projects, and I can't remember how, if Grandmaster Shin approached me or we were having a conversation. I can't remember, but I remember I said, "Oh, Grandmaster Shin, I can do that. I got the equipment, and I've done actually photos with my students and everything." And he said, "I could do it." He said, "Great, you're doing it." I said, "Great." And I remember we had the photo sessions, and he came in and checked it out, and we were having our banquet at the end of that master's clinic weekend, and he made a joke about Master West, he come up with new technique, Ichi Ichi camera, right? I laughed because I did like over 3,000 photos or something like that. It was because we did it going forward, going backwards, sideways. It was a lot. And anyway, that to me, with his involvement and getting involved with that, was such a pleasure and honored to be part of that. Because also, not only being the photographer, I was like a technical advisor, one of the technical advisors for those books, and even with the latest revision of the Derrion book, we did it here in Region 4 and totally organized it and all that stuff. And then I did I don't know if you know, but the front illustration in front of the book, I did that as well.
Oh, and on the Hyung book?
Yeah. Oh, the one steps book, the Derrion.
The one step book. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did the illustration for the front cover on that one. So I mean, all the projects, especially the master's text, I mean, great achievement. But Derrion book is also something special in my heart, because we did everything here, and then I provided options. I would say, okay, we'll do like one shot, do 2 or 3 options, and then let like the TAC committee or the Grandmaster decide on which option to go with.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of that whole process, because you got to figure out in just a picture how to illustrate a technique, like you said, like 29, like how do you convey what's going on in that, or 30 in that technique through a picture? And so that's, I guess you have to be part of the advisory committee, right? Because you're shooting the picture and it's like, well, that one doesn't work, that one's a little better, I think we can do this.
Oh yeah, and then to try to convey, like we would do some doobie shoots, based upon like, okay, let's do an angle to show that that's a tighter controlled technique, or okay, this is a takedown, and we would have to try to shoot it in mid flight, mid, and to show how, if that was an effective takedown with the ending. So I remember we spent 12 hours one day. We stayed late. We stayed 12 hours one day, and then we came back the next day and finished it up. So, but labor of love.
Yeah. One of my, a personal story, my wife was in she was in the Ilsasic Darien 6-10 years ago. They shot it at Master Midas' studio. And there's in the video, her and now Steph Mabrook, Steph was doing number 9, and she elbows her, and you can see my wife just gets smacked right in the nose, and she was a pro. She just took it. but it was fun. Like, at Worlds, she used to get recognized. She's like, you're in the one-step video.
That's right. I was like,
did you ever get that? Oh, you're the bad guy in the books.
I don't think people looked at those inserts too closely. but yeah, I'm honored, I guess, through those books and projects, and of course now with the Masters Guy, I guess I became the unofficial the world tongue pseudo photographer.
Have you helped out at World Championships taking pictures in the past at all, or it's more just with the book projects?
Yeah, they had their own photography team there, and so whatever pictures I take of the world was just personal, time and everything. But of course I always talk to the photography team, because we always like to say, okay, what camera do you have? And lens, what lens are you using? So
awesome. In your region, as far as like those types of things in Region 4, did you get a chance to, when you're not busy judging or helping run a division, to take some pictures at your various tournaments?
Yeah. We it depends on the event and everything, but yeah, I'd like to take the photos and then Bukajin Sharp, he likes to takes photos too, and he told me, oh, now what you mean, it's it's tiresome to take over 300 photos.
Yeah,
camera gets heavy, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to have your arms up here like this. You got to, you adjust. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but absolutely.
Yeah, you could get tiresome after a while. But
that's right.
Yeah,
you mentioned you're doing some Kempo training back in the day. Are there any other styles that you've trained in outside of Tung Sudo that you continue to I guess enhance your Tung Sudo training?
Yeah, the what I've done, and I guess what's influenced me, like especially when I do my self-defense, or what I call ad hoc. So one of my things that to this day, and my students will tell you, is when we start talking about self-defense, I get excited about it, whether it be knife, gun defenses, or just multi-strike techniques, and making, one of the things I do with my black belts is I take our standard 1-steps and I make them into advanced 1-steps, by doing what I call it add-ons, or okay, now just add a prefix to it with an add-on, and just kind of change it up and make it more advanced. But the influences there was officially we took Kempo. I think I have a yellow belt in Kempo, but I've never forgotten the concepts, of efficiency of motion, and then alternating between your hands instead of just using one hand all the time, alternating your hands, and using those multi-strike and those flow of techniques. So to this day, I try to apply those principles when I do that, but it's more from I would say more from a tongue solo perspective, right? And then also doing a eskrima sticks, using those same concepts. The other influence was, well, actually through Bukwanji named Sharp, through his knowledge with the Kuksul, the joint locking techniques, and Hapkido as well. So Kuksul and Hapkido, being exposed to that, and through him and I training together, when we can over the years, I think influenced that, because even within Tung Sado, you'll see our basic joint locks in there, but to expand that and know the range. So I think those have been the major influences of other things influencing my training.
You mentioned self-defense being a big focal point for you. And, we notice at Don testings that sometimes when someone puts their hands on someone, that's when they have a little more trouble, because maybe they didn't focus on it as much, or, people get a little nervous. What are some of the tips and advice you give to your students when it comes to, that close counter, those close quarter self-defense scenarios?
Well, it's funny because even though I teach my students, I go through these ad hocs and these scenarios, unless you practice it regularly, till it comes to almost second nature, people have a trouble reacting. Like when they get nervous, like you said, like they're nervous or something like that. I think their body, mushim, right, empty mind, just defaults to what they're most experienced with. And I think, unfortunately, what they're most experienced with is the standard one sets that they go through as black belts or as students through black belt. And unless you practice these more advanced things or these other scenarios to become more second nature, it's hard, right? So that's my advice, I guess, is you need to subject yourself to those things.
Yeah, you're right. If someone grabs you and you're like, oh, what's that arm bar that I learned, 3 months ago? And it's like, I tell my students, it's like, what do we practice the most? Strikes. Hit them first and give them something to think about. And then that's when you can do all the other stuff. But if you just try to grab someone and then manipulate them without giving them something else to think about, there's little chance of those things being effective.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's why I tell my students, fog their mind with pain, and exactly what you said. So that way they become more compliant to what you're trying to do. If you just try to do something, they're going to resist you right off the bat. Mm-hmm. But if you take their mind off it by striking them, slapping them, whatever, then you're be more likely to be successful.
Right. So, like you said, you're more likely. Whether you be successful or not, that's a whole other story. But if you're struggling, I like that, fog the mind.
Yeah, fog the mind. Yeah.
I always say disrupt the CPU.
There you go. I like that.
You want to take out the mainframe, because this is not what you need to worry about. It's this.
That's exactly right. Now, Yeah, I like that. I might use that too. Just disrupt the mainframe.
Yeah. You want to take it offline.
Yeah. Dude.
As we start to wrap up here, again, I want to thank you for joining me. I learned some great stories about you. We talked about Grandmaster Shin, but I'd like to know if you'd be willing to share a story or two about some of the times that you got the chance to work with him. Obviously, you talked about the book. Can you think of any other times that you got a chance to share some time with him?
Yeah, one of the I guess most cherished times I have is I hosted the regional championship here in San Antonio, and he got to come down, and I think we did it. He came down 2 or 3 times to San Antonio, and the first time he brought his wife down, and they actually spent a few days after the event, like 2 or 3 days, and kind of was on a mini vacation, visiting our historical. He liked history. He liked going and to the missions, and he did the mission trail. So we have 5 missions, including the Alamo. Fascinated by the Alamo, and then so one of we were on the Riverwalk. So one of my favorite pictures I have in my home office is myself with Grandma Shin on one side of the table, and his wife and my wife on the other side of the table, and the Riverwalk is in the background, and we're all smiling towards the camera, and that's one of my favorite pictures. And one of my other picture I have, which no one has ever seen, maybe someday I'll bring it out. We visited a local ranch that has a small, like a Western town replica, and he's going through the saloon doors with it, like a, I don't know if he has a cowboy hat on, but he's going through the saloon doors through it, and so that was a fun memory. And then let me see what another. Oh, and then another time, it was just he and I the night before the event, and we went back to the Riverwalk. It was just he and I in the evening, and enjoying a beer together, and just talking, and yeah, that's something that was so special, to spend that type of quality time with him. And he talked about everything. He used to always ask about Floyd Guidry, and especially earlier on, he's always asked about Floyd Guidry and everything. And of course, he talked about Chuck Norris just a little bit, but yeah, that was fun times with him.
I love hearing those stories of the playful side of Grandmaster Shin, going through the saloon doors. Grandmaster Sean shares a story of him holding a big giant fish in Aruba. There was a time that, I don't know if you remember the show, the British show, Mr. Bean.
Yes.
He loved Mr. Bean. So at Dawn Clinic one year, he made us watch episodes of Mr. Bean with him. So we're on the bleachers, and he brings out the projector, and so we watched, and he's just slapping his knee and just laughing, and it's fun to see those glimpses of him, that lighter side of someone that a lot is very friendly and nice, but can be stoic and is the leader. So
yeah, definitely, I considered him a father figure, and you're right. One side of him, people would be like, like, yeah, because he, like you said, historic and being the leader, but then you're right, the playful and sense of humor he had as well. I remember going the first time I had gone to Sweden. It was in conjunction with the European leadership, like Masters Clinic, and Master Marco and I walked in, and we're just a few minutes late to the start of it. And Grandma Shin was talking because our travel was a little late, so we're walking in, he stops what he's talking about, and he, we're trying to be quiet, right? Coming in, he quiet. There, that's Master West. He's a real cowboy, and he starts chuckling. He's from Texas. He's a real cowboy. I was like, thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing us to ourselves.
Right. You're trying to like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, again, thank you for sharing those. We're pretty much wrapped up here. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we finish, or any closing words that you'd like to share?
Well, the only thing that comes to mind, I kind of mentioned earlier, is, keep your, bottom line, whatever you do, keep an eye on the ring, and, make a plan for it, and stay the course. If you fall and stumble, of course, get up and dust it off and keep moving forward. Whatever your passion may be, but one of my major things is, and I've said this in different forms, is we all have the love of Tang Soo Do, and what can, like I always look for the opportunities and how I can contribute to our association and to our art. And I would look at you, all of you out there, as part of the World Tang Soo Do and the love of our martial art, is like, what can you do to contribute to the legacy by our founder, Grandmaster Shin, in the pursuit and keeping our organization and martial art alive and flourishing, and set it up for success in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Master West, for joining me. And thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate the support that everyone gives. And sir, I hope to see you sooner than later in person. I'll be sure to stop by and say hi.
Well, same here. Thank you very much for the time.
Tang Soo.
Tang Soo.